Hello, I'm Brian Sethurst in Los Angeles.
And I'm Alison Norrington in London, and welcome to the Story Hour.
The Story Hour sits at the intersection of storytelling and technology. We bring you the story behind the stories, how it's written, how it's produced, how it's distributed, and even the personal stories behind the storytellers themselves.
We talk with the master writers, producers, directors, authors, and technologists, covering it all from film and television to literature, virtual and augmented reality, and more, as well as the innovations in production, technology, and distribution that are changing the how of storytelling.
So, like us, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to know when the next episode is coming, hit that bell and you'll be notified. Our guest today is a three-time Primetime Emmy Award-winning short-form interactive creator and showrunner. Currently, he's co-creator and showrunner of Artificial, the first live audience interactive science fiction series to debut on Twitch. Now in its third season under quarantine, the show is currently presented weekly 2-hour live interactive dramatic episodes that are remotely produced. The series was awarded the 2019 Peabody Futures of Media Award and was awarded the 2019 Primetime Emmy for Innovation in Interactive Media.
Our guests' other works include the Lizzie Bennet Diaries and Emma Approved, both adaptations of Jane Austen's novels. Known for being two of the iconic multi-platform franchises of the era and for winning the first and second Primetime Emmys for YouTube, I'm excited to welcome old friend, writer, showrunner, Bernie Sue.
Hello. Wow. That was great.
Love to play with the sound effects.
Yes. Excellent.
Every bit of applause is deserved, though.
100%.
And welcomed and received. So thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And this is an honor to be with two of my favorite personalities and storytellers in the space.
That's cool.
And happy to be here.
When we all met, our world in terms of interactive storytelling was small. And now it's grown. And, to think that you would actually have a series on Twitch, which is a platform primarily for gamers, and to all of a sudden have this be now a content distribution platform with you leading the way, that's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. If you had asked me 3 years ago if Twitch would ever do a scripted series, I'd be like, "What? Come on!" And sure enough, here we are in 2020 during a pandemic. Them, greenlighting funding and supporting a very biasly, I'll say, innovative series that could only be done on the platform. And hey, the world's changing in many ways, as right before our eyes.
You seem to be really good at that, though, right? You seem to find a way to have a vision for putting content in a place where it's kind of really well received, but people wouldn't perhaps think of putting the content there, right? I mean, it's not the first time you've done that.
It is not the first time I've done that, and it is something where I enjoy this. I think a lot of my even the works that were talked about in the intro, which have that kind of vibe, that trailblazer break through the brick wall quality of, oh, we can do it this way. No one's ever thought of it this way before. And the Lizzie Bennet Diaries was that for YouTube. Artificial is that for Twitch. The first show on the platform, no, not the first show on the platform. A first show presented in a very unique way on the platform, and first for both platforms to win the Primetime Emmy. So I do enjoy that. I think that's just a part of my upbringing, that it's more exciting to me to kind of trailblaze and innovate in new spaces and new areas of storytelling than it is to kind of, oh, let's just do another short film or another TV show.
I think
It's a little different.
I think what the essence, and we talk about this all the time, is that regardless of the execution, the elements of story, if the elements of story aren't there, then the audience is not going to interact. I always believe an audience is interacting even if they're reading a book. And so to be able to have a story that's strong enough, that has the audience grab onto identification with the character or the situation in order to prompt a response, those elements, for you as an innovator, those elements are always there. So the essence of story, it's not the what. We always say it's not the what that necessarily changes. it's the how. And that's where it's kind of scientific, your approach in the way you look at the way you imagine the audience will interact and what you as the storyteller, you not only have to have a relationship with your characters, but you have to have a relationship with your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say for both the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, even Emma Approved, and Artificial, all three of those shows at the time when they debuted could only be done on those platforms. Like, uh, you certainly you can do a version of Lizzie Bennet Diaries now that Facebook has evolved and these other platforms have evolved. But at the time, which was 2012, you could not do that series on any other platform. And we're very, very adamant, myself and my co-creator Hank, on that statement. And we're both very cognizant that you could just do the series on Facebook, for example, now just basically fine. Artificial in its current state, even though YouTube Live does live just fine, Facebook does live just fine, Instagram does live just fine. You cannot do Artificial the way we're designing it on that series, on that platform, on any other platform aside for Twitch, because Twitch has some very unique things on it. And so that's what when I'm tasked with these kind of with these we'll call them very groundbreaking projects, that's how I looked at the lens. It's like, all right, what makes Twitch uniquely Twitch? And it's not just what you think it is, which the first thing you go is, oh, it's live. And the second thing you go, oh, it's gaming. Like, yes, that is Twitch, but there is so many more nuances of tech and tool sets and things that are built into the platform that only Twitch can do, that are tools that you can use in your storytelling. And that's where I find the magic, where you actually do things that are like, oh, this cannot be done, or it'll be a totally different experience if you watch this on your like Amazon Fire through the Twitch app there, versus being on a kind of a native Twitch experience with the chat rolling and you're able to type and use your mouse and touch the screens and stuff. So that's the nature of the way I kind of think about these things.
So here's the question then, what comes first for you, right? Say with Artificial, is it like
Sure.
the story came first and you're like, okay, I'd like to do this and this is the interaction I'd like? Or did you look at Twitch and go, whoa, that's cool? Like recognizing all of these sub layers of different tools and functionality and then thinking I'd love to write something for Twitch?
So for Artificial specifically, I mean, I was exposed to the story first by my co-creator, who is Evan Mandry. He's a traditional writer. He's a novelist. He's a professor. So he's very much a traditional storyteller, and the concept was interesting to me. But I had been thinking about Twitch for years as a platform to look at. I had the relationships there. I still have them. And I just thought there was an untapped potential with the tool sets, with chat, with polls, with extensions, with the APIs. And so technically Twitch came first, and then the idea came. But then once I identified that the idea would work for Twitch, I pivoted the idea into the platform and presented it as a Twitch show. So I'll give you an example. If I were to just pitch you the original Artificial is a story about an AI being, an artificial intelligent human that wants to become human. That's a very common AI story. That's like every AI story. Literally, the movie AI is this story. Okay, so so this is not a unique story by any means, but it's the way we present it that makes it incredibly unique. And that's the difference of it. I'm very, very open to the fact that story is not. I mean, there's unique parts of that story, yes. Okay, I'm not saying the story isn't coming out, but the kind of basic high level pitch about it isn't that unique in the AI realm or the AI sci-fi realm. But the way we present it is completely untouchable as far as the individualistic uniqueness of it. And because of you take that into Twitch, it's I mean, Lizzie Bennet Diaries is a perfect example of this. Lizzie Bennet Diaries is Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice has been told hundreds of times over the generations, and we just present it in a very unique way. It is still Pride and Prejudice on YouTube. And it's just because we're using YouTube for what makes YouTube work really well, in my biased opinion, that's what made it work. And that's why I think Artificial works, even though at the core, it's a story about an AI that wants to become human. That's the basic of it.
Why don't we take a look at the trailer so that our audience, at least the audience that's watching on video, so that our audience can actually see what we're talking about.
Great.
Maybe you've never heard of artificial. Maybe you didn't know I was a robot. Maybe you did. Maybe I'll become sentient. Maybe you'll help me. Maybe you'll try to stop me. Maybe you'll decide my name. Maybe you'll change everything about me. Maybe you'll like the feeling of control. Maybe the music will change depending on the mood of the chat. I'll teach you something you never knew. I'll predict the outcome of the next election. We'll go to a new planet. Maybe I've been lying this whole time. Maybe you'll discover a glitch in my code. Maybe I'll discover a glitch in Maybe yours. I'll fall in love with. Maybe you'll destroy. Maybe I'm evil. I'm not. Recipe for banana pop bread. Music. I'll start to emote. I'll become an emote. This is a comedy. This is a tragedy. My destiny is in your hands. Hello. Who am I?
Excellent.
So I'm going to wind back a little bit, right? I want to lead us up to a point of talking about Twitch, okay?
Sure.
You and I met nearly 10 years ago, 2011, at the Storyworld conference. And when I met you, you were looking to focus on like TV writing and online video. But then was it 2012 or 2013 that Lizzie Bennet Diaries came out? There wasn't much of a gap between that time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Your timeline's right. Storyworld, I believe, was either late summer, early fall 2011, if I remember correctly. It was in San Francisco, and I still very, very publicly state that was. And this is a little praise of you, Allison. It was the most consequential conference of my life. I'll say that. It changed my career. Not in the sense of like I met the right person that gave me the resources. It's what was taught and what was spoken and said at your conference at Storyworld. It completely changed my look at as a storyteller. And at that time, I was already developing Lizzie Bennet Diaries. And it pivoted from we'll just say a YouTube series, which it's, Lizzie Bennet Diaries still is a YouTube series. So, but then it became, after the conference and studying and, applying some of the methods that were either mentioned at the conference and or unlocked in my creativity because of what was said, Lizzie Bennet Diaries became the transmedia piece that it was. And I think it's still pointed at very, very often as the seminal transmedia property of the era of like that 2000, early 2000s era, 2010 era. I think. I mean,
it does. I mean, listen, like I think we went for breakfast a couple of days after, or maybe the week after, and I remember your brains were blown, right? And we had breakfast, and you were like, "Oh my God, this is so different to what I wanted to do. Everything falling into place." And now, like, I work with storytellers, filmmakers, students, and they tell me about Lizzie Bennet Diaries, right? They telling me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm very honored by that, and I still get messages every year from college students or post-college students that have written theses on Lizzie Bennet Diaries. There was a young woman who was working at Twitch. I don't think she's still there, but I was speaking at Twitch about artificial, and she came to me and was like, "Yeah, I wrote my thesis on Lizzie Bennet Diaries." It's like, wow, this is so weird.
Crazy. But there was something too about the vlogging element, right? The direct-to-camera vlogging. Like, I think that was a little bit disarming in a positive way, because you don't expect that from Jane Austen, right? The stories as they were very passive, and they're very sit back, and you're told the story. And this direct to camera, I mean, even now there are people trying to do that, and I feel that the curve has moved on from that. But there was something about the execution too. Don't you feel that kind of set it aside? Yeah.
Of course, because we designed Lizzie Bennet Diaries as a very kind of, at least we tried, as a very kind of authentic experience. So what I mean by that is that we designed it as authentic as we could, as if the main character, Lizzie Bennet, was a vlogger, and what would vloggers essentially do or not do. And she doesn't do everything a vlogger does. We kind of pick and choose our battles based on resources and time and stuff. But she tweets. She posts pictures. She, at the time, Tumblr was a very, very synergetic thing with our brands. She tumbles, and other characters were doing things like blogging, taking photos of themselves with fashion and all that stuff. So all those things are part of the experience, and and these were things that were inspired by, again, talks at your conference. Like, I did not go into that conference thinking I was going to turn her into a transmedia, tweeter. That's a word. And then after the conference, it started evolving into this way of thinking of like, all right, what is the off platform or the multi-platform experience of this story? And that came from, again, all the talks. I know Brian was on some of those talks. I remember that I had not actually physically met like Mike Manello for until about 2 years ago. And when I met him, I said, hey, your talk at Storyworld about the marketing of, I believe, True Blood completely changed my way of looking at Lizzie Bennet Diaries. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I think that talk inspired the way I looked at how to present content on Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was not every Monday there's a video. And then it was like, okay, how do we spread the content out so that there's stuff going out every day of tweets and pictures and Tumblr posts and everything. So it was not a Monday weekly event. It was every Monday through Friday, there's a conscious decision of story content going out or not. No, not every day. Maybe we skip a day or so, but it was all conscious and all planned because he had presented, I believe, was a marketing or kind of distribution plan of content for True Blood at the time, and I was so like impressed by the way of thinking because I had never thought of it that way. I always thought, well, it's Tuesday night, and that's when I watch this show because that's what the network tells you when this episode's on. And I watch it, and I'm done. And
there's something in here, Bernie, I think this is in your DNA, because you're saying that those talks inspired you. That was great. I merely think they drew your attention to possibility, and I know it was 2010 because that's when we had done Conspiracy for Good, and basically. Kind of Tim knew the audience and he knew what he wanted to do, and there was something in his DNA. But I think what you are a master at, and maybe you don't realize it, you are a master storyteller, but what you're a master at is looking at, I don't want to say institutionalized behaviors, but I would say existing audience behaviors. So that when people interact with your stories, that audience that you're reaching, they already have those behaviors. They are already vlogging. They're already tweeting. And so basically you are taking existing behavior and layering in. I don't even want to say layering. You're sort of entering that world. And all those behaviors, that it's kind of natural. At least that's my impression of you. We've talked about this before. But just like you look at the capabilities of the platform, maybe it's on a deeper level of consciousness, but you're also, the audience behavior on these platforms. And I think somewhere in there, it's like, well, if this is how the audience is behaving, I am going to become a member of that audience, still be the storyteller, still be in charge. But there's something, in my observation, that's in your DNA regarding audience behavior, because if I'm getting into your story, and it's on a platform that I already exist on, you're not asking me to learn new behavior. I am native to the behavior that's part of your story, and I think that's absolutely brilliant. And maybe, as far as Lizzie Bennet was concerned, you were the first to capitalize on those existing behaviors and to layer in a story that is irresistible because it's a timeless story. But now the audience, you've built the story world, and their behavior automatically makes them part of the story world. So that's my observation. So even though you were watching us on the panels, there's something in you that already had it. I'm convinced.
Oh, thank you. Hey, I will just point out that growing up, I've always been a path not taken type of guy. Like, it's like, let's go over this way. And so the idea of making it, like, we'll say authentic to the experience, as you said, as authentic to the audience experience. Yeah, so thank you. I've never heard of, I've never had someone say that about me. So I really appreciate that observation, and I'm not going to dispute it. I feel that, like, even with Twitch, I'll give an example of this too. So with Twitch, in 2000, I want to say 18 or 17, even 16, before 2 years or a year or so before artificial even became a concept at Twitch, I went to TwitchCon, not as a speaker or anything. I just went, and the people who had worked with me before, like on Emma Approved, who saw me there, and they actually were confused, like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what do you think I'm doing here? And he's like, something's going on. And like, well, I'm just here to enjoy it. And it's like, but yeah. And so sure enough, they were correct about it a couple years later. But I went not because I was ready to pitch to Twitch or trying to get a show on Twitch like the next day. I was like, okay, I'm coming to immerse myself into what does it feel like to be a Twitch user, a fan, a consumer. How does this work on the platform? What doesn't work? And it's a hard road because Twitch is big. Twitch is a 200 million unique per month platform, and it's not just gaming, and it's not just one game. It's all sorts of things, and so to even try to immerse yourself in that is a very different feel. And I did this with Lizzie Bennet Diaries too. Lizzie Bennet Diaries, Hank Green, my partner on that project, is a YouTuber, still is a YouTuber, and I remember when I had first started designing that show, this would have been wrong. I was looking at that show and designing it like a CW show, and then I went, you know what? I'm gonna go watch Hank do his thing, like go watch his him and his brother John Green. They did a book release event, and they packed this 1,000-person theater with all these teenagers and fans, and all these were not CW popular fashion girl women, young women. These were literary, just like the nerd girls, and I say that lovingly. Like these were not the popular girls, and I'm like, I think I'm designing this show for the wrong audience. I gotta recalibrate the way I'm thinking about this thing. And so I remember that very vividly. That experience, even though I was just watching John and Hank do their thing, I'm like, all right, I am completely designing this thing wrong. I'm going to scrap 80% of what I've done so far and redo this and design it properly for this audience instead. So that is just kind of my ethos of immersing myself as an audience member as best as I can and trying to empathize and understand that audience. And it takes some time. I don't nail it right away.
So Bernie, we're at the end of part 1 of our interview. So storyteller extraordinaire that you are, give us a cliffhanger so that people will come back for the second part, which will be next week, but so that people will come back for the second part.
Sure. So I guess next up, we'll talk about how we produced a season of Artificial, a 20-week, 5-month experience, scripted, interactive, remote television show, technically, all remotely produced.
Excellent.
That's what
folks, if you like what you've seen, subscribe to the channel. If you want to be notified of when Bernie's back to talk about what he just described, the nuts and bolts of production, click the bell and you'll be notified, and we will see you with Bernie next week.